Hey, folks, welcome back to the Testing Psychologist. I am glad to be here as always. And today, my guest is talking about a topic that I love to talk about in general, and that is technology and assessment. So, my guest today is Rich Brancaccio. Rich is the uh, lead of Pearson's newly acquired wearable technology group. He's a school psychologist who is passionate about helping kids with focus and attention challenges, and several years ago invented the original Revibe device to help children perform to their fullest potential. So you will hear us talk about Revibe a lot. That is the main topic of this interview. Revibe is a wearable technology and online platform to help track and monitor and get feedback on kids and adults' behavior throughout the day. So there's a lot more to say about this, and Rich is exactly the person to share that information with us. So I won't spoil too much. The interview, I think, is a deep dive into this technology and everything that they're up to. And frankly, sounds quite exciting for the future of assessment. Now, things that we talk about the background and the origin story, so to speak, of Revibe. We talk about what it does, what it is, who it's helpful for, some of the ways to utilize the data, what kind of data it gathers. And we talk about downsides, of course, and situations or folks for whom it may not be appropriate. So lots to take away from this conversation, as usual. And if you have an interest in technology and assessment like I do, I think you'll really enjoy this one. So I will take you to my conversation with Rich Brancaccio. Rich, hey, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me today, Jeremy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited to chat with you. As someone who is an early adopter of all kinds of technology and just like steeped in tech and of course the AI stuff and everything in that world, I'm really excited to be chatting with you about what y'all have going on. So thanks for being here.
Of course.
Yes. So I'll start with the question that I always start with, and that question is, why is this important? Why spend your time on this? Spend your life on this?
So, it's, for me, anything that can be innovated should be innovated if it helps people. And so, my biggest pet peeve in life is walking by something in the city or wherever I may be, and finding something that has been the same problem for years and years and years, and no one does anything about it. And so I really enjoy looking at problems and trying to tackle them from a unique perspective. And I'm a big fan of tech, as you said, and AI and machine learning and wearable technology. And so I've taken that drive to innovate and I've applied it towards my other passion, which is helping kids. I think helping people generally is super fun. I realized how much I enjoyed it. We're here at APA this week, which is why I'm sitting in a hotel. So I stepped away from the booth for a few minutes to come over and talk to you. But I was talking to my Uber driver, and he was starting a business, and I found myself trying to coach him a little bit. And
Mm.
it's just interesting when you think about infusing two things that you love. So for me, it's innovation and helping people.
Mm, yeah, yeah, well said. I love that approach. I think about that a lot, and I'm going to hold myself back from just going down that rabbit hole and talking about all the different business ideas. But yeah, I love that. I love that approach and how you phrased it, just walking around and noticing things that could be different, using
Thanks.
that as motivation. Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. So that might be a good segue. I read the bio in the intro, of course, but I would love for people to hear a little bit more of your story because I think you're a different type of guest than we might usually have. So maybe tell people about your journey to where you are now, just to provide some context.
Sure. So to go way back, and then we'll bring it up. I grew up building things and taking things apart. I was really a child who liked to get something, play with it for a bit, and then I would disassemble it and build it into something new. And so, I've always had that aspect to me of curiosity and technology and wanting to enjoy that rush you get when you build something new and you create. And so, I found myself, to fast forward, working as a school psychologist. and really loved my job. Loved again the helping aspect, and that's a problem solving job in and of itself. Is you're constantly solving different problems, challenges, and so I found myself in an RTI MTSS meeting one day, and we had just helped a parent with a child. I think the daughter was having some reading issues a few years prior, and so we went through the process, and it was very successful. And then the son from the same family had some attention and focus issues, and so the mother said, "Why don't you have anything better than what you're offering me?" Because we were saying, "Well, you can do this intervention, and we can capture some data by using index cards, and you can switch rubber bands from this wrist to this wrist." And she said, "This is all you've got?" And I went back home and I said, "Is this all we've got?" You know? And so I decided to do something about it. And, the challenge we have in the school systems and in private practice, is the helping team, as I like to regard everybody involved with, you know, trying to improve outcomes for children. We're limited by the tools that we have, and most of us can't stop and build something new. But at the time, I was younger and had more time on my hands, and so I decided to build something that could help, and it was going to help in the intervention approach and also in the data collection approach, because those are two areas that it felt a little bit like the Wild West, 10 years ago. And so I built a prototype. I taught myself microelectronics, and I was soldering, chips onto circuit boards. This is before there were a lot of like development kits available 10, 12 years ago. So I
Hmm.
was shrinking these circuit boards down from the size of a shoebox to the size of something you could wear. And then I learned software. So I wrote some fairly basic code. I wrote some algorithms around, an idea that I had, which was if we could redirect children on task without embarrassing them and creating a negative interaction between them and the teacher. And if we could collect data to actually, empower those making decisions, and we could do it in one fell swoop, the children would benefit because they're, more focused and they'll have a better outcome. The teacher would benefit because they can focus on doing their job, which is to teach children and not have to stop every 2 minutes to redirect all the children who may be off task. And the school and the care team really benefits because you have more data to make better decisions. And so, yeah, that led to me just creating this device and trying it on a few friends and family. And the first question I got was, "This is great. Can I have another one?" And I said, "Well, it took about 80 hours or so to build that one. So let me see what I can do." So I went out, and I tried to find some groups in the North Carolina area that would foster, economic development. We went through an accelerator program. I started a company around this theory because the people who I showed it to said, "I need that for my son or my daughter or my granddaughter or my neighbor." So once people started to give me that feedback, it felt almost like a natural path that if I have something that can help people, I should bring it to the people who need help.
Right, right.
So
That journey is remarkable. There are a few things to touch on there, and we might nerd out a little bit here, just because I really can't help myself. But
I'm a huge
I
nerd, so
am
I'm good with that.
nice, nice. And one might argue you're at a conference full of nerds, like the psychologists who are interested in it. So I think it's in this wheelhouse. But I'm so curious just how you went from, "Hey, I see this problem," to, "I'm soldering, microchips onto circuit boards." And yeah, I mean, that's a level of maybe confidence that I don't think a lot of us have. So could you flesh that out a little bit? Just, I don't know if you remember, like,
Oh, I
how
do.
did you even start that process?
So the first thing I thought of was not to start a business, right? I was really enjoying my job as a school psych. And I had never planned to change careers. To me, people who change careers, that's for someone else. And
Hmm.
so, I just thought of the idea, and so I started to look for some other options. And I had tried everything that was out there, but for our applications inside of a school, nothing was really doing the trick. I kept getting, things put back in my mailbox. Thanks for buying this. It didn't work. We tried this other intervention that didn't work. And so I was talking to my dad. And my dad said to me, "You grew up building things. Why don't you build your own solution?" And I said,
Mm.
"Yeah, why don't I build my own solution?" And so I just started more of a curiosity. Like, I
Hmm.
wonder if I could. And like anything, if you're, you're playing, you grew up in the 80s and you're playing Zelda video games, or just this journey or this process starts very innocently. And then once you're in, it's hard to get out because you're really infatuated with solving the problem. And so, yeah, I started to I wonder if I could, write some software to do what I was envisioning this thing would do. And I did, and it worked on a computer screen. I said, well, I wonder if I can put it onto somebody's wrist. And so it
Mm.
just kind of progressed naturally.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I love that. That's a really cool, kind of remarkable story, and hopefully gives people some hope. And especially considering the technology and the ability to Google things and get some help these days is way higher than it was 10 years ago. I would imagine.
Yeah, if you, I talked to, as you mentioned, we're here at the APA conference with Pearson, and some of the folks I've been speaking to have had some ideas where they've said, "I've always thought about doing my own thing for X or Y or Z," and I
Hmm.
tell people, there's nothing stopping you from doing that if you can dedicate the time and the energy. There's a lot of resources out there, and ultimately, it's going to help somebody else. So start your journey.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. So now might be a good time to really dive in and tell people what this product is, and maybe there is some evolution in there of how it started versus what it's like now. But I think it'd be great to lay the background information for
Yeah,
folks.
that's always helpful. So the product is called Revibe, and it's short for reminder vibration. And it started, as you suggested, started simply enough with the notion of, instead of having teachers in school or parents at home verbally redirect children to focus and pay attention, which oftentimes results in a really negative interaction between the teacher and the child, or between the teacher or between the parent and the child. So I wondered if we could do it in a way that was less conspicuous, that allowed the child to save face with their peers, and that maybe empowered the child to feel like, I've got this, even if it's something external to my body. It's something that's on my body, and no one else has to know that I'm getting a little bit of help to kind of level the playing field. And so it was this level the playing field, mantra that I went forward with to say, how do we give these kids the same um, skills and abilities that maybe some of their peers are blessed with naturally, where they have other skills that allow them to do great things, but some of the core things like focus, attention, executive function, they may be at a disadvantage compared to peers. And so, what we did was I thought to myself, if we can send a vibration signal to the wrist that's silent and nobody can hear it, that child can redirect themselves back on task. And so it's this metacognitive exercise that they're doing where, we tell people, we paired it very early. If you can think to yourself when you feel this vibrate, ask yourself, what am I doing right now? If I'm on task, good job, keep it up. But if I'm off task, be sure to get back to work. And so the first device that I built, it was really a one size fits most. There were a few algorithms you could pick from: low, medium, and high. And you would get a lot of variability, infuse some basic psychology principles into it. So some of the things that were included were um, changing things up. So some variability. So you won't habituate to it, because if you give the same vibration pattern and the same time interval every time, you habituate very, very quickly. And
Hmm.
so I realized early on I needed to have some controlled, I call it pseudo randomness to this device. And so it's, think about a test floor and a ceiling. That's what I did with Revive to start out, to say we don't want it to be more than this many minutes between prompts, but it shouldn't be so quickly or so short that you actually become, annoyed by it, or you would habituate to it. So we send these vibration signals to the wrist. It was a very simple device. And we got some really great feedback. I was really shocked how impactful that this was. It surpassed even my own expectations for sending a vibration to somebody's wrist. And so then we ran some studies just to see what the improvements looked like. And we saw, somewhere around a 19 or 20% improvement over baseline in a real world setting. And so from there, um, and at this point, I had formed a company, had some employees, and we were working towards building another version, because the first version was really successful. We moved a lot of units and helped a lot of children. And so we said, let's take everything good about the original and let's keep that. And let's take this new burgeoning technology known as machine learning, which is under the umbrella of AI, as some people may be familiar with. And we said,
Hmm.
let's bring big data and machine learning and let's infuse that into a second version. And so that's what we wound up doing for version 2.
That sounds amazing. And just to be super clear, to paint the picture for folks, we're talking about a smartwatch, essentially. Is that right? So kids are
Yeah.
wearing a smartwatch.
So Revibe is a wearable device that sends silent vibrations to the wrist of the user to prompt metacognitive awareness to help them refocus. We're trying to extend the amount of time they spend on task. We're trying to reduce the amount of time that individuals are spending off task. And we do this through what is essentially a wearable device. The original version looked like something out of Star Wars. It was pretty neat. The second version looked more like a fitness tracker. And the
Uh-huh.
newest version that's coming out in about a month is built on top of a Samsung Galaxy Watch. We take full control over it so that you can't do anything other than use it as an intervention and data collection tool. There's no playing, there's no games, there's no phone calls or text messages. Um, but that's the form factor is worn on the wrist. And so what we tell people is when you put this device on, we ask you to give it some feedback. So the original one didn't have any feedback. It was just when you feel this vibrate, ask yourself, am I doing what I should be doing? If you are, good job, keep it up. And if you're not, be sure to get back to work. We built a second version, which we incorporated some of the up and coming technologies, things like big data, things like machine learning, which is under the AI umbrella. And so the second version incorporated a level of feedback where we would say not only ask yourself what you're doing, but please tap the device 2 times to tell us, yes, I'm on task, or tap it 1 time to tell us, no, I was off task. And so what that started to allow was to give us some personalization where the device can actually learn over time and in real time where you struggle. You enter in all of your courses or your classes. So you look at your academic schedule. The device learns over time that, let's say it's me. So Rich really does well in the mornings when he's in science. So we're going to give him few and, soft vibrations, but we know math is coming next. And that's where he really struggles. So the device will automatically change itself up as it learns over time. And it'll personalize every profile of patterns and vibrations for each user. And so if those things change over time, it'll also adjust as things change, but it can also adjust in real time. And so with the newest version, which is um, again coming out in about a month, we've taken that. We've worked with Samsung to take over the Galaxy Watch, which is a wonderful platform. And we do everything we've always done in version 1 and 2, which is providing these vibration reminders to keep you on task. We're personalizing, but we're also taking some things to assist further, like executive functioning, for example. Instead of having to have post-it notes on someone's desk or tie a red ribbon to your wrist to remember something, we said we can do that on the wearable. And
Hmm.
so we have the ability for whomever is the account holder, if it's a parent or a teacher or a clinician, perhaps, you can program in custom executive function reminders. And so it'll pop up on your wrist at whatever time you want it to. And it'll tell you, remember to go see the school nurse or remember to write down your homework. And you can, acknowledge it or you can snooze it. So we're collecting all this data. And then finally, a part that I think is really interesting is we are training, and we just wrapped up a standardization study. So we're training the device to actually use the sensors on board to detect things like fidgeting. And so if you want to know, how is this patient trending throughout the day? Are they getting more fidgety? Or are we getting more hyperactive types of behavior or less? Is it in the mornings? How are we looking? You can actually look and have some actual metrics around movement. You can look to see, are we getting a lot of steps during academic coursework? If I see 2,000 steps during math, that may not be a good thing. We may need to look to see what's happening. Conversely, if you see a lot of fidgeting and that's helpful, you may want to encourage more fidgeting. And the last thing that I'll share about the platform that we've built, which is this watch itself that is an intervention tool and a data collection tool. There's a
Hmm.
platform you sign on to. which is web based. So you can go on your tablet or computer or phone, and you can view all this data. And some of the things that are really exciting for me, again, you mentioned that apparently we're both nerds when it comes to technology and psychology, and I love to fuse the
Oh,
two of them
yes.
together. So what's really interesting to me as a psychologist and a technologist is that we scan all the data every few weeks, and we're always looking for patterns and trends and correlations. And so we'll share back with users, and we'll say, "Did you know that when Rich took 2,000 steps or more before 11 a.m., his attention span for the rest of the day is 6 minutes longer on average when he has that opportunity? Or did you know that when Rich fidgets for at least 20 minutes before science, his focus rate is 18% higher than days he doesn't have that opportunity?" So we're trying to provide, some concrete, actionable insights that people can use to make better decisions through data.
Mm, I love that approach. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that gets me really excited about the future of our field, right? Like so many of these variables we try to rely on, even just observation or after ad hoc reporting or post hoc reporting, to have something like this in real time that's actually gauging some kind of physiological data is it seems really valuable. So this is super exciting.
I agree. I think as a field, I was fortunate enough. I was doing a talk last January, I believe, and the point of my discussion was to highlight for folks in our industry, in psychology, psychiatry, generally speaking, um, the other professions have infused psychology seemingly earlier than we have. When you go to a cardiologist, um, they put a device on you to collect real data in real time to make decisions
Hmm.
about the course of treatment. And so, not that we would say to use this, to make a decision for a course of treatment per se, but um, it is, as you said, nice to be able to see information. What I would consider and what I call continuous data collection or a living systematic observation. So, if you wanted to know, let's say you've got a student named Anthony, and you want to say, how's Anthony doing? You can say, show me mornings versus afternoons for Anthony, or show
Hmm.
me how did he do last Monday when this happened? And so you can really drill in to see specific times um, for people wearing the device to try to get a better understanding of what's happening. And it's interesting because it syncs every 15 minutes. So if you have it hooked up to Wi-Fi, you can get almost real time data back.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, this makes me think of, there's a lot of research out there and more coming out to suggest that ADHD symptoms in particular quite variable, both, day to day, month to month, but also even on the course of years, where folks appear to be almost like symptom free for periods of several months or even years sometimes. And all that to say that, symptoms can be quite context dependent, I think. And, this just makes me think how valuable it could be to actually have closer to real time data and see where are these symptoms occurring more often. Even class to class is great, but I'm also curious about like after school or at grandma's versus home. In sports versus academic. If they eat breakfast, if they don't eat breakfast, it's all these factors that contribute to kids' variability that I think we struggle to explain, as testing folks. We really want things to be consistent and predictable and well, consistent. That's probably the best word. And they often are not.
And it's tricky, right? Because we think about when you administer a test, let's say you give a behavioral rating scale out, you get one very, you know, I won't say biased, but one very extreme picture from one parent or one
Sure.
guardian. And then you get something completely different from the other parent or guardian. And then you look at the teacher scale and you go, who do I trust? It's
Sure.
very different. And so, I think, and that's for certain things, that's not that problematic. We don't see that much. But for focus and hyperactivity, those are things that, depending, as you said, depending upon the area that we look at, who's rating, when we're talking about, you can get very different results in the morning versus the afternoon, or on the weekends versus the weekdays. And so I think this is something where we have the opportunity to help people do their jobs better and easier and to be more accurate. And so one of the
Mhm.
folks, we have a great scientific and medical advisory board we've worked with over the years, and we've had a pediatric advisory board as well. And what I hear consistently is it's hard for me to do my job. They said for other things it's easier, but when it comes to focus and attention, I'm relying a lot on trying to understand what's happening. When I'm not there, I can't necessarily observe it in front of me, but yet I'm tasked with trying to sometimes make really important decisions as a clinician. Um, and so the more data we can give people, whether you're a school psychologist and we can give you, let's say, instead of 40 minutes one time of an observation that you're using as part of the IEP evaluation process, you do that. Maybe you trim it back a little bit. Maybe you do 15 or 20 minutes of in classroom observation, and you pull some wearable data to supplement that or to bolster it. And if
Mhm.
you're a clinician and you're trying to just get an understanding of like where does this child fit or this adult fit in the continuum of my other patients, it's helpful to have some metrics to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get into some logistics real quick, and then, well, I want to keep asking some, rabbit hole questions. But who do you think who's the target market for this? Is it the parents? Is it the school? Is it clinicians? What's that look like?
So it's all the above.
Hmm.
We've had a lot of schools over the years. Um, you know, Hundreds of different schools have used these devices over the years, and the new one that's coming out, with Pearson is extremely exciting because it does more, better, easier than we've ever done before. But generally speaking, this is a product that is designed to work for everybody who you mentioned. Um, Actually, let me cut that, Jeremy. Let's do the 5 second thing. Let me give you a better response if it's all right.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So this product was designed to work for all of those folks who you just mentioned. So schools, clinicians, families. It's considered a qualification. So all of the above can purchase it through Pearson. Um, but we've seen a lot of schools who have said, we're looking for a better way to collect data and to provide a research-based intervention to improve focus and attention, complete work or improve work completion. Um, and we're looking for better ways to collect data because the schools have a very daunting job of making these decisions with, again, sort of the same limited data that all of us have to work with. And so we see this as a tool for schools to make better decisions with less resources, required to collect all the data or to intervene on the intervention side. For parents, a lot of them have shared with us, we're looking for something to help. I'm not comfortable with other interventions that have been looked at. I'm not comfortable trying this, or I've tried that and it didn't work. And so a lot of families take matters into their own hands and say, I want to start to try something that's, very, low level in terms of invasiveness. It's just something you're wearing on your wrist. It provides a vibration. The vibrations are very short. They're powerful. They're between, 3/4 of a second to under 3 seconds. So they tend to not become annoying, which is good. We don't want to annoy our users.
Hmm.
We tell people you should probably wear it on your dominant wrist, so that, or sorry, on your dominant wrist, so that your non-dominant hand can actually tap. If you want to provide feedback, it won't stop you from handwriting. So it blends right into a school environment. And then finally, clinicians, and I've heard some really great feedback at APA this morning. This is the first day of APA. This
Hmm.
was today. And so just hearing from clinicians, many of whom are in private practice, been really excited. This was the first day we've actually unveiled the product in public, was here at APA.
Oh,
And so to
congrats.
hear people's feedback was terrific. Things I heard this morning were, I need more insight into what's happening with my patient because there's this lack of communication that occurs between the patient, the parent, and the teacher. And if I can have a portal or a gateway to see what's going on and I can monitor it, then when they come to session, I'm ready to talk about it. I can look and I can set things up to be able to say, I asked you to, provide feedback. Like we're going to have an option probably about a month after launch called EMA inquiry, where essentially it's ecological momentary assessment. You can program whatever you want to ask your patient to say, it's 9 o'clock. I want to know, how's your level of anxiety this morning? Or it's 4 o'clock. I want to know how's your level of energy, right? Let's say you're looking to see, appetite or energy or any of these questions that we want to pick up and do so in a really quick, easy fashion that you can look at and store and review. And that's really the name of the game for us is we're trying to impart positive change and also really smoothly collect data that can be viewed and utilized.
Right, right. Is this, the whole time we've been talking, I pictured this for kids, but what is the actual age range of clients or students or people who might
So
benefit?
anyone can use the device. The sweet spot traditionally has been the 8 to 12 group because there's
Hmm.
a lot of challenges and a lot of things kind of surface around academic concerns in that age range. But mostly children from second grade or so right through high school or college. We've had a lot of adult users too, right? We've had these past versions which occurred before it was under the Pearson banner. And we had a lot of adult users who would share, I grew up as a child with ADHD and I didn't outgrow some of my challenges. And so they use it as well. The oldest user we have on record, we had a physician from the Mayo Clinic who bought one for his father who needed to be reminded to do certain things. He was 103 years old. So we've said, we've seen it
Wow.
used from 3 to 103. But yeah, the sweet spot is 8 to 12. And we just did a norming exercise to standardize some of the fidgeting metrics. And to train the model for fidgeting metrics. And so that age group, when we roll this product out, is going to be from 7 to 13. But again, anyone can use it. That's just the age group that we would say, here are the norms that we're comfortable sharing, normative data for in terms of fidgets. But it works equally well on the intervention side from everybody we've seen thus far.
That sounds great. Yeah. So you mentioned being able to compare data, within a person or a kid, let's say, throughout the day. Are you also doing any kind of between kid comparison in the sense that you're, developing like I don't know, I'm not a statistician or test developer, but, almost like a norm group for fidgeting or other behaviors and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So what's been fun about this project, we've been working on this here at Pearson for about a year, and there was development done even before that time. But we've really tried to take our time and build a really great product that we feel excited to share with everybody. And so with that, traditionally, as you know, Pearson and other test developers will spend a really long time building an amazing tool, the BASC, the WISC, all these terrific tools. But those tools, maybe the team spends 3, 4, 5 years working on it or more. And then you won't see another one or any changes made for several, years, a decade,
Hmm.
sometimes, give or take. This is one of the first products, if not the first, to my knowledge, at Pearson, where we've gotten the green light to do things differently. And so we are going to roll this out as what I would call a rolling launch, meaning we have a baseline of a lot of great things that the device does, but we're going to continue every quarter to continue building new features, new functions, more research. So the norms are something that will come out at some point, probably a few months after launch. We have the data. We're working on it as we speak, but we didn't want to slow things up for things like that or the ecological momentary assessment. So a few things that we have that'll come out shortly, but we're really excited to bring the product out the way it is. So for now, it's going to be somewhat as, if you want to think about it as an intra-individual snapshot of somebody, and then we'll have some comparison groups quickly.
Great. Great. And we talked a lot about, or a few times about fidgeting metrics, which is cool.
Mhm.
That to me seems easy-ish from what I know, about the device and the technology. How does that compare to more inattentive or just off task or unfocused behavior? Is there any way that you're getting at the the less hyperactive or fidgety stuff?
So what we've done is we have a two-part approach. The fidgeting part, it's actually very, very difficult when you're training the machine learning models to identify. So
Mhm.
we'll start with fidgeting. Um, what we've done is we've identified fidgeting as something that we consider the operational definition was something that's cyclical, repetitive, but it's non-academically functional, meaning something like handwriting fits the bill. It's cyclical, it's repetitive. It looks similar if you watch the graphs that we can see behind the scenes, but we've
Mhm.
trained the model to differentiate handwriting, which is academically functional, to put that in one bucket. And we've trained it to understand and recognize that this is fidgeting, which is non functional from a traditional viewpoint. There actually is some interesting, and I'll share in a few minutes, some interesting metrics for each person. Sometimes fidgeting is really helpful. It's
Mhm.
almost a compensatory strategy if you want to think about it like that. And then some people and some times of day it's unhelpful and you want to try to provide something different. So we've trained the model to use these sensors where we're looking to identify these fidgeting behaviors and to quantify them. And then we can say this person spent this many minutes a day or in the morning or this month, this class fidgeting. And so we feel really comfortable and it's easy to collect that data because it's in the background, it's passive. So in terms of active data collection, where there's some part on the user that they have to provide feedback on, that's where we collect data on inattention, focus rate, meaning on task versus off task. So we take this self-report, something we call digital self-report. So we're asking people in real time to give us the feedback on the watch, and so we're saving and we earmark all the responses that we get. And so we create a map, if you will, of what attention looks like as this person is sharing throughout the day. Yes, I'm on task. No, I'm off task. So then we say that this person had the maximum amount of time they could have been potentially on task and focused was from here to here. What was that average for this day or this hour or this month? And that gives you some understanding around, is this person able to focus better in mornings versus the afternoons, or they struggled in one subject? A lot of children and adults with ADHD do really, really well with things that they are interested in and that they're strong within, but they tend to really struggle in things that are either maybe not interesting or they have a hard time with from an attention and focus perspective. So we didn't want to use something like a galvanic skin response, because if you're judging focus using something like that, you may be very, very focused on the wrong thing. And so you can show extremely high levels of focus because the person is like really intently thinking about the Carolina Hurricanes hockey game last night. So what we've decided to do is put that into the hands of the user. And so we've looked at some meta analyses over time, and we've looked at our own data. Children and adults are surprisingly good reporters of on task, off task. And we've made sure to incentivize them to provide feedback through PBIS models. We have fun badges and animated things that pop up on your wrist to celebrate. But we never, ever try to incentivize people to have a higher focus score or not. We don't want to incentivize people to give us, um, you know, incorrect feedback. And when the users find out, even younger children, that the more they honestly answer, the better the device helps them, it really motivates them to be quite honest. And when we look at the data, we spread it all out and we look at it. We're not seeing any kind of patterning that would be suggestive of people being untruthful or skewing the data towards always being on task.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's a concern. I thought about that early on. If we're relying on self-report, how are folks actually handling that, and kids especially?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great question, and we really try to be proactive in how we've come up with things and what the rationale was, and what's interesting too that you could think about. Because I asked a child once, who was an early user, and I said, "How do you answer the device?" And they said, "I tell it the truth." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And they said, "Well, you told us that if you answer it wrong, it doesn't really help you, and I like that it helps me." And then the child said something I thought was interesting, which I always think about. And they said, "Even if I were to tell the device I was off task, it's still going to make me think about what I'm doing right now, and I'm going to get back to work." So I said, "Great, the outcome is one and the same for the therapeutic benefit." Um, but we have a lot of happy users over the years who have shared things. We just we just did a trial, as I mentioned earlier, which was really rewarding to do, to get to meet some children and train the model. But one of the participants came up to me and she said, "I drove 3.5 hours here, and I'll drive 3.5 hours when I go home tonight." And I said, "Wow, why did you make such a long trek?" And she said, "Well, we've been using the device since my son was in second grade, and he's going into, I think he was going to seventh or eighth grade."
Mm.
And she said, "I want to get a device as early as I can because he really benefits from it." And so, that's something that's been special to us, to have long-standing relationships where and I try to think about things as I talk to people about Revibe that I think they should know. And if there are questions about would people habituate to this quickly, the answer is we haven't seen that happen. We have some users who've been using it for 3-4 years and continue to use it, and some people who are using it for less time. And it won't be for everybody. You'll get somebody occasionally who will say, "I just don't want to wear something on my wrist," or "I don't feel like using this." But I think over 80% of users wind up using it and continuing to use it. So it's been a really good experience for us.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I was going to ask if there are any cool stories or feedback that really stands out from users. It sounds like that's one of them. Are there any others that come to the top of your mind?
Yeah, what was interesting is we've had some people who have shared information with us, like um, you know we've had a family who's been using it for a long time, and they said we stopped using it, and we said, "Oh, how come? Was it not helpful?" And they said, "No, it was really helpful. We went from 5 days a week to 4 days a week to 3 days a week, and eventually we just he learned to be more self aware. So he checks his own thoughts and behaviors, and his teachers are sharing that he's on task now. And so these are the kind of things that I start for our research plans, start to look at longitudinally. I'd love to track some people over time and see what this looks like over years and years. Um, but it's to be really candid, it's for a minimally invasive intervention. Again, vibrating on your wrist, and there's a lot of technology obviously behind this, the algorithms, and it's learning and personalizing and everything. But at face value, to send a vibration to somebody's wrist, I've been floored with the level of improvement that we've seen. We've seen from some of the studies, we get a moderate to large effect size on the intervention side, which, if you asked me 10 years ago, would we be able to do something like that from something so innocuous? I would say probably not. But some people really respond well to it. I think as you said earlier, it speaks to the fact that, we see some similarities in children with ADHD, with autism, all these different things where you'll have focus and attention challenges. Um, these children typically are really motivated to do well. They want to try their best. They want to be on task. They want to do well in school. But they just, there's a puzzle piece here or there that just needs to get filled in to help them get there. And so they've told us anecdotally, it's the vibrations we get that are the little puzzle pieces that we fill in to kind of get us over the line.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you about research. It's a nice segue into that since you mentioned studies and outcome effect sizes and that kind of thing. Just tell me, I mean, my audience clearly is interested in research support for any intervention. So give me an idea of what that looks like thus far. What kind of research have y'all done? What's it showing?
Sure. So we've done over the last several years, we've done 7 studies to date. Um, we've done blinded studies, we've done open studies, we've done in school, in the real world assessment. We've done things that are decentralized, where we're just sending devices home and we're using rating scales to get feedback. Um, I've had equal interest in both because I think there's value in both. I think
Hmm.
sending observers into the classroom, 3 days a week to track children in their, natural environment is very meaningful. I think doing things like we've done, where we have a simulated classroom environment, very very helpful to get information from there, and then sending them into the real world and just getting parent feedback only. Just anecdotal feedback only is really valuable. And so when we look at the gestalt of the research, what we see is whether it's open or it's blind, whether it's parent or teacher or observer, we're getting improvements that, as I mentioned, moderate to large effect sizes that are consistently improving focus and attention symptoms with long-standing impact. So we're seeing what we would consider to be far transfer, where this is making a difference for these children. Which again, I mentioned this child earlier who stopped using it after a while, and so in terms of these studies, we're seeing statistically significant improvements across nearly all areas, even in some areas that we've been surprised to see. And I can highlight that a little bit because I think it may be interesting for your listeners. But when we see things, significant improvements in areas of focus and attention, that makes sense. We see improvements in work completion. We've done things like uh, the whiffers and looking at some of the more academic side of things. So we're seeing improvements both in attention and focus. We're seeing improvements in academic functioning. We're seeing improvements in social interactions, which was interesting for me to learn,
Mm,
and also in some of the scales like hyperactivity, which was really fascinating for me to learn because that wasn't the original thesis. The original thesis was keep kids on task. They'll be able to have more academic engaged time because they're spending more time listening, sitting in their seat, um, less time looking out the window or doodling or thinking of things that they shouldn't be thinking about during instruction. And what we learned drilling into this, we've had some really amazing people that have been on our scientific medical advisory board. So we've had Cecil Reynolds, authors of the Basque. We've had Margaret Weiss, KOL and ADHD, one of the best in the business.
mm.
And Dr. Greg Mattingly was on there as well, giving us some really amazing feedback. Again, one of the best in the business. And so when we looked at some of these data points and we were trying to figure out how is this translating into that, um, what we learned was if you're in a better position to do what you're supposed to do, then you're not doing these other things that tend to inflict or cause challenges around social interaction. So if you're not um, getting up and talking to your neighbor if you're a child in school, then you'll have less negative interactions because you're spending more time doing your work, they're doing their work, and that's where a lot of these negative interactions come from.
Mhm.
And same thing goes for the hyperactivity scales that we looked at. How are we improving hyperactivity? Well, we looked at the parent and teacher rating scales, particularly teachers. If we're getting the children in their desks more, meaning they're standing up less and leaving to walk around or to go talk to people, the teachers are rating them as less movement, less hyperactivity, kind of doing things they shouldn't be doing. They're not moving, like they're driven by a motor and all these terms that we use. And so that's how we're seeing this more global impact from just helping you improve your focus and attention and bolstering these executive skills that go along with it.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, this is so cool. I mean, I am really interested in the EMA component. You mentioned that a little bit ago, and I wanted to come back to it because I'm just personally very interested in that dimension of things. So, I mean, I guess we're talking about EMA generally, and so as far as checking in with kids throughout the day. But you specifically mentioned like I think anxiety was an example. Um, can you tell me any more about how you might be utilizing it for ecological momentary assessment?
Sure. So what we've thought about, and this goes along with the innovation side, especially using, we have this, as I mentioned, a relationship with Samsung that's terrific. And so they let us take over this watch and it excludes everything. You can't text message or get music or do anything that you shouldn't be doing. It's solely an educational technology device, assistive tech device. And so it's very flexible and we can do almost anything, which is wildly exciting to have a palette like that. And I've always said for the last decade, we're fusing psychology and technology. And so what's exciting about that is we can take this device, which is originally, you know, theorized around just focus and attention, improving work completion and academic engaged time. And we start to look at it and we started to say, well, I wonder if we can just send some text reminders, not text messages, but text reminders to help with executive function. And it was wildly popular with children, adults, parents, teachers, because again, they're having to redirect folks less and they have more independence. And they're coming out with better outcomes because they didn't forget to write their homework down. They didn't forget to bring their diorama to school that day. And so then this moved into the next category of we can do anything we want on this watch, can't we? We can. It's a touch screen. We can build a slider. We can build some fun animations, and um, I can. If it'll show up on the screen, I'll show you a sneak peek of what it looks like.
Mm,
But we decided that there's a lot of things we can do to gain information. The complaint that we heard from folks was even when I progress monitor, I'm doing that on a couple times a month, depending if it's reading or if it's behavior, or maybe a weekly basis. But clinicians have said, I want more data more frequently. And our thought in our internal team was, well, we can do it really quickly. It can be very innocuous. It doesn't distract. It doesn't, flag any of the students around you or peers if you're an adult wearing it. But we can take this data and we can save it and we can show this and assemble, all these different data points to give something more representative about this person. And so you can personalize, or you will be able to personalize these EMA queries where you can say whatever the account owner is. So if the account owner is the school or the parent or the clinician, they can program it to say, how are you feeling right now? And we have these um, dynamic faces that'll change. It makes it very easy to slide the scale around, and you can go from a 1 to a 5 and share and how you're feeling. How did you sleep last night? Do you have any anxiety right now? We have some other things in the works that are exciting as well. It'll leap off of this, but that's the first thing for us, is to really allow some flexibility to give practitioners in particular more data about what's happening in their patients' day-to-day lives.
this is great. We've talked, I think, about a lot of the positive. I can see a ton of potential for this, and in some of my offline conversations with the Pearson folks, was even thinking, how can we utilize this as practitioners? Could we do an eval intake for a kiddo, and then send them home with this device for a couple of weeks, and then get it back with some real world data to integrate into the evaluation process? That was one idea that came to mind. So I see tons of potential for this.
Jeremy, I'll tell you what's fun. I've been at Pearson about a year now, almost a year. Um, I used Pearson products when I was a school psych, and I was a big fan of beforehand. But the people at Pearson, as I know you know some of them very closely, um, everybody's here for the same reason. Everybody's really driven to build tools that help people and help the people who are helping those people. And so we've had this really fun opportunity. We meet with the different teams around Pearson, and we're always looking for what's next.
Mm,
What do we do with this? How can we advance, the science of test and assessment using this technology? One of the things I heard at the booth this morning at the APA conference was, and I heard this consistently, which was, I take it as a compliment to Pearson. They said, I'm shocked. And I said, what are you shocked about? And everybody said, I never pictured Pearson getting into the wearables space, into the technology
mm,
space like this. And then I said, well, how does that resonate with you? And they said, it's great. We need to advance as a community of practitioners. We need to see what's next. We can't keep using the same things over and over forever. We can keep those things around because they're great and they're validated and they're terrific tools, but we should start to expand as technology gives us a bigger palette to paint with. We should start expanding the size of our mural. And so that was the feeling this morning at APA. And I think that's the feeling, ubiquitously at Pearson. Everybody's excited to be able to do some new things in the future.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I'm excited to hear that. Now, we do have to talk about potential downsides, because I feel like, it's going to come up for folks. And just, full disclosure, when they pitched this idea to me, however many months ago, and just, like, hey, what do you think about that? As a parent of two teenagers in middle school, my very first thought was, how many kids are losing this device, and maybe this is just my kids, maybe not, but that's just one example to kind of start off and be funny about it. But curious, yeah, how do you handle that kind of thing? Kids losing it, misplacing it, not wearing it, and maybe we can talk about other potential, downsides to it.
The so and again, I'm really transparent. I love to just be, as forthright as possible with pros and cons, right? Because if you're
Sure.
wondering it, someone else is wondering, and I'd rather just really, share everything that we think about and how we approach, the pros and the cons, as you mentioned. So yes, it's an expensive device, right? It's built on a Samsung
Mm.
Galaxy 7. It's not a cheap piece of hardware.
Hmm.
So what we've heard from families and from schools, from practitioners is I'm a little bit concerned about what a child might do to an expensive piece of hardware or electronics. And so
Hmm.
what we've done to try to mitigate that is, instead of just putting them out the door and that's it. We have a subscription that we're going to launch with, and it's going to be a subscription model where we provide as part of the subscription, we provide the watch as part of it, and so it includes the hardware itself, the platform I mentioned earlier. We can go online on the Revibe web app. You can view the data, share it. It'll put out a one-touch report PDF, which summarizes the last 6 weeks of data for progress monitoring and for some database decision making exercises. And so it does all that. It also includes a replacement warranty. So if you crack the screen, rip the band, it gets run over by the school bus or the family minivan, you mail us back the pieces and we send you a new one for free. And so for that, we're charging $400 per device per year, depending upon how long that you will sign up for a subscription for. But for most people, and we did a lot of research to try to understand what's the best way to approach something like this because it's so new, right? It's novel. Most people don't put a wearable on a child.
Right.
And adults obviously it's less concerning if you're an adult user, but that's the solution that most groups that you mentioned felt the most comfortable with is if it gets damaged, we send it back, we get a new one. And so that alleviates, I think, a lot of the concern for people.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Have you had any pushback from folks about potentially wearing two devices? I just think about like the ubiquity of Apple Watches, and me personally, I have a running watch, like a fitness watch that's also kind of a smart watch. Like, have you had any pushback around that?
So that's more, I would say, middle school to adult users would
Hmm.
potentially have that kind of a concern. The second to seventh grade crowds not really wearing devices right now. But what's
Yeah.
nice about this is, again, we have this great relationship with Samsung, so we have the ability to throttle certain things. So we could and may start to unlock some of the features for, let's say, an adult user says, "Hey, I want to use this for exercise." We may wind up unlocking some of the features at certain times when it's not a focused time, to allow them to have more usability out of the watch beyond just this kind of education technology assistive tech tool.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, that's super interesting. So, starting to wrap up a little bit, you mentioned, of course, this new product is coming out here soon. By the time this goes live, that we might be in real time. It may be released or very, very soon.
Yeah.
What else? What are you most excited about with the new product or new developments? Anything else that you might share that is on the horizon?
I think for me, I've mentioned the word, palette a few times as we've been talking, and I think there's a lot of creativity that goes with innovation, and to come to a place like Pearson, where innovation is embraced and we have the resources, the people, the skill, the knowledge, the technology to be able to build things that help people, without the constraints that we face in the past. I ran a startup company for 10 years. And so you are always picking and choosing. We have to do this or this, that or this.
Hmm.
And so to come to Pearson, who gave us a clear directive of we want to innovate, we want to lead the way in wearable in terms of intervention, behavioral data collection. The support that we've received at Pearson has been tremendous. Um, lot of excitement around what we're doing. And so to be able to collaborate with people and to really, I think, hopefully infuse a paradigm shift in the mental health space around, as you said earlier, Jeremy, to infuse this paradigm shift into we shouldn't guess or assume or hope when we can, track, view, and interpret, right? Those are much better building blocks to start decision making when it comes to anything clinical. So that's what I'm excited about is just giving people better tools to do more with less to drive better outcomes for their patients.
Nice. So I might close with a personal question. That question is, at this point in your life, would you consider yourself more of a school psychologist or more of a technologist slash entrepreneur?
It's interesting. So when I was younger, I had absolutely no interest going into the business world whatsoever. I wanted to be a psychologist or a school psychologist, and that was my field. I was interested in engineering, so I took some engineering coursework in high school. Um, and then when I transitioned to the role of a school psychologist, I just, I fell in love with, again, the problem solving aspect of helping children academically, socially, emotionally. And then the technology thing, I've always been, as you said, I think you probably are too, sort of a technology nerd. I like electronics. I like to learn and to tinker with things and build things. And so infusing these three things together, I would say I'm absolutely cut from the same cloth of school psychologist I've always been. Once you've been in that world, you can't leave it behind. I think
Hmm.
it's enmeshed. It's the fabric of who you are when you are any kind of helping profession person, which is interesting because I connect with a lot of people, folks at Samsung who lead Samsung Health. The person who leads Samsung Health was a nurse, years and years before that. And so you just connect with people who are now transitioning into the business world, or the technology world. And so I think I'm still just as much of a school psych as I ever was. Um, but I think growing and learning and figuring out new ways to do what I've always liked to do through technology. I would say that I've metamorphosized into a butterfly that wears a couple different colors now. It's been very fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Yeah. It's always, I mean, we retain these parts of our identity and hopefully they, inform any new identities that emerge.
And if it's all right, I may pick up and do your question one more time, and you can pick whichever version comes out better. 'Cause I don't even know if metamorphosized is actually a real word.
I was going with it. I was totally on board, but yeah,
I'll
let's do it.
I'll give you one more answer. It'll be shorter and pithier, but if it's all right with you.
Yep.
Okay. So, um, yeah, my journey started as a school psychologist. Had zero intention of ever leaving the field or heading into the world of business and technology. But I think I'll always consider myself to be a school psych. I was in the profession for 10 years, tested thousands of kids, and you just can't leave that behind, nor would I want to. I think it's a part of who I am. But I think as you grow and relationships, your friendships are hopefully the same as they were when you've had childhood friends for 5, 10, 20 years. You're the same friends, but you've all expanded your interest. And so I think it's kind of like that. I think I've expanded my view and my ability to build tools for people now on a grander scale. So I think I'm always going to be a school psych, even though I'm not testing and helping kids directly. I'm still able to build some tools that will help other school psychs and clinical psychologists, psychiatrists. I think we can build tools that help other people. And so in that regard, I'll always consider myself to be somebody in the field.
Mm, yeah, I love that. I think that's the best case scenario, right? Like you retain those parts of yourself, and they just get woven into whatever new identities you might assume. And especially in this case, it comes in really handy to have that clinical side and know where your users are coming from. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, it's been fun to be able to, even here at the conference this week, it's been fun to be able to connect with people, and to be able to answer questions about, like, tell me about the artificial intelligence that you used to build this. How does that work? We can also
Hmm.
talk about the whisk or the bask, and so it's good. And it's a lot of people at Pearson are very similar. I've noticed many of my colleagues were clinical psychologists, school psychologists, occupational therapists. physical therapist. So everybody seems to have a lot of familiarity with the products that we build and sell, which has been great.
Nice, nice. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time away from the conference to come and chat with me here for a little while, and happy to give folks some exposure to this product. We'll make sure to put the links in the show notes for folks to find it and learn more and purchase if they would like to. And all in all, just great to connect with you, Rich. This was really interesting and exciting, and appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, Jeremy. Thanks for having me, and appreciate the opportunity. And hopefully, we see each other at a conference in the future.
That sounds great.